Whereas if you just read the white paper, you don't come away from that thinking like, yes, this is a very sound investment that I'm going to hold and reap future returns. You just sort of think like, oh, cool, maybe I can buy a hot dog with
Yeah.
this. Maybe I can buy something online without using PayPal. But all that's gone out the window now.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Today is Friday, the 28th of May, 2021, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. The topic this week is crypto versus governments, episode 20, and I am here with James, an artist who drew my little picture for my podcast. So many thanks for that, and I guess is a Bitcoin Cash fan. So introduce yourself, man. How you doing?
Yeah, hey everyone, I am James, and I did indeed. I drew the new little logo on the RSS feed there, and I'm just so everyone knows exactly what they're getting. I'm not heading up any inspiring projects to bring economic freedom to the third world. I don't have any charts and graphs to blow your mind. I'm just a regular haver of Bitcoin, liker of Bitcoin, and sometimes user of Bitcoin. And yeah, I was riding my bike along, listening to the podcast with one earphone in, for safety.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe I'm gonna draw something when I get home. Maybe I know I'm gonna draw Jeremy's face on a coin for the logo because it just sort of said Bitcoin Cash in a white square. And now, obviously, I need to do a new one. He's gotten rid of his beard, so we're gonna have to sort that out now.
All right. Well, either way is good. I quite like the beard one. Yeah, little bit hippie, a little bit indie, and definitely when I was. Although maybe it would be confusing too then, because yeah, when I've been meeting people at the meetups and I say subscribe to my podcast and they look it up, and if it's with the beard, then that's probably what every single one of them will say. They'll be like, "Oh, it's you," but like, what happened to the beard? Like, that's obviously the fashion. These days, or maybe it isn't
I,
anymore. I don't know. It's not winter here in London anymore, so I'm kind of keen to deheat
you
myself.
can just swap it. You switch it based on the season. I initially had you on a green coin. I thought we need to keep the branding consistent, and then I looked at it and I went, "Uh-oh, this looks like some kind of St. Patrick's Day thing here." You don't really recognize it as a coin unless it's
Gold,
gold,
yeah.
which is sort of the other guys. But
Oh, that's fine.
hopefully we get the message across
Yeah, we
there.
just co-op their branding. That's all fine. Like, pretty soon we're going to be the real Bitcoin anyway. So, screw them if they don't like it. Too bad. All right,
What
cool.
do you mean? We are the real Bitcoin. Come
Yeah,
on.
well, that was the thing. I was arguing with somebody on the threads, this week where they were saying, I mean, basically, it's basically uninformed to kind of just say that BTC is the real Bitcoin in anything other than name, and it's mostly just an accident of history that it sort of worked out that way for them. So they were very lucky in that regard. But the thing was, somebody was saying, "Oh, you're not the real Bitcoin," blah blah, and I sort of said, "Well, look, there's points on both sides. I mean, to be honest, Bitcoin Cash has all of the points. The only point it doesn't have are the brand name and the hash rate. Those are the two things. The price is kind of irrelevant, except in so much as it links to the hash rate. So because BTC has the higher price, it also has the higher hash rate. And so if Bitcoin Cash can, have a surge in price and then attract more hash rate and then take over and then get more than 50% of the hash rate, well, BTC will probably die pretty quickly after that. I would expect because that's the one thing that they have. And definitely, I know people that I've already introduced to Bitcoin Cash and traded with them a little bit and stuff. And then they just say like they don't even call it Bitcoin Cash; they just call it Bitcoin because they're like, this is obviously the real thing, because I'm trading it with you, not like BTC that they've never been involved in or whatever. But I expect that as Bitcoin Cash takes over Bitcoin, we'll end up in a scenario where the denialism from the BTC crowd, like obviously everybody in that camp now is going to have the choice, right? Do they defect or do they just stick with their beliefs? And that sticking with it is going to be less and less tenable until it gets to a point where they're just irrelevant, right? And so it's going to be kind of like if we flip the hash rate, then I expect fully that there'll be some other, oh no, but we've got the brand name and you are the scam or like whatever. But by that point, nobody will freaking care. So, just make them obsolete basically.
Yeah, as far as the Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin thing, I've had people come and argue with me on Reddit. I hang around in the subreddit, and then you get the opportunity to see the arguments of the people from that other Bitcoin and the other subreddit come in and take offense or whatever, and they think that we're just talking about the name. Like we're saying technically we should have that name, and the point is no, it's the spirit of the project. It's not that we think that we've been tricked out of the name.
Yeah, exactly. Like branding is just brand. Well, I mean, in some senses, it's kind of like a Theseus's ship type argument, right? If you have a ship and you replace, one plank of wood, one plank of wood, at what point is it a new ship or is it the same ship, right? So I guess, it can sort of get into philosophy a little bit there, but definitely, I think loads of the people who don't understand the distinction or why people have that argument, it's because they came in after the fork, and so to them, their sort of reality or their story is like, oh, well, this is Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Well, they sort of forked off as though we went off to the side rather than it was kind
Yeah.
of like it was one road that split into two sort of equally rather than like one that was going straight ahead and one that just kind of, offered a right angle type of idea, right? So I think they often think of it like that, right?
That's one of the weirdest things I've encountered recently bickering with these people. I only just realized that they believe that we came out of left field and just latched onto the name. Like they literally don't understand that it was a common origin point. It's the same blockchain, and one project had one interpretation and the other went its other way. And I've actually had some people say like, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I really did think that you just sort of came in and co-opted the name." And that's why they repeat this scam coin thing so much of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating because you ultimately, I think it's actually to our benefit, sort of in a way that because if people have all this misinformation and stuff, obviously that's ideal. It would be better if there was no misinformation. But when they have the misinformation, what happens is they, one way or another, they eventually get to the real truth of the matter. As you can see, when you argue with them, sometimes they just argue and then they just piss off, and then sometimes they argue with you, and then they, eventually, or they look around, or they try using Bitcoin Cash or something, and then suddenly, like the doors open in their mind that they understand, and then once somebody has been through that process, they are more of a stronger convert than you could ever possibly, achieve any other way, right? So that process, I think, is really good because I mean, anybody who was around before the fork, they sort of had that process by default, at least if they're in Bitcoin Cash now. But for the people who are coming into it, obviously, if you just start in Bitcoin Cash, then maybe at a certain time you look at Bitcoin and then discover, wait, this is shit, and you come back. But if you've been on the Bitcoin side and you're Bitcoin Cash is a scam and blah blah blah, and then you eventually realize not, well, you're going to be a pretty good advocate when somebody else has those same arguments. Bitcoin Cash is a scam, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I feel like most people, I don't know, maybe over half are people who have gone through that process of having that realization. It's one of the most fun parts about that subreddit is that you see these posts where people have kind of hung around and they have that moment. And I myself, like I was around before the fork, but I sort of said, okay, let's get on whatever Bitcoin related subreddit seems to be out there. And then the BTC one was always just sort of there in the background, and it was like, well, they're saying some weird stuff, and I don't know. It seems like there's some controversy going on. I don't really have time to figure it out. And then I sort of gradually absorb it, and at some point there a light bulb goes off, and you have the moment of like, oh shit, these people are actually correct. Wait a minute, what am I doing here? And you see that happening almost every day. There's a post like that where someone has come over from the other side and really reluctantly, gradually have been absorbed by the facts, have absorbed the facts rather. And I don't. Do you think it's most people using Bitcoin
Maybe
Cash
maybe it
at
is
this
by
point?
now. I mean, I don't tend to think of it that way because I was so adamant, at the time of the initial split and in the discussion and sort of arguing for Bitcoin Cash and everything like that. And then after they split, and I was in the Bitcoin Cash camp like briefly, and then I sort of got a bit disillusioned and sort of just left it all alone. And so then by the time I came back, they, or sort of when I came back, I was thinking about this today. I looked and I saw, okay, well, Bitcoin, I had a quick look at that and I was like, yep, that's still garbage. And then I had a look at Bitcoin Cash where I knew, okay, that was kind of where the action was. But then there was Bitcoin SV as well. So I was kind of like, okay, could be either one of these really. So I spent I don't know how long it took me, but maybe it was like a week or two, and I was sort of browsing on the forums, looking at, catching up a bit on the history of who had done what and said what and whatever. And then, I came to and I was like, well, Bitcoin Cash is definitely the one once I figured that out a little bit. And then I think that's sort of the key point that this podcast, or that hopefully people can get the idea of, is that really you want people to independently be able to sort of identify the real Bitcoin, because who knows, Bitcoin Cash might split in the future. It might turn into Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Ultra or whatever. And there's always going to be arguing over who is the real Bitcoin. But, I know what the real Bitcoin is. I'm very confident in my ability to sort of identify it. And I think that's what part of this podcast is, trying to help everybody understand the concepts and the philosophy, and to encourage them to read the white paper and to try and use it and all those things. Because once you have all that context, obviously, then you can, it doesn't matter if there's another sort of censorship attack or there's more, shenanigans behind the scenes or whatever. People can independently figure it out themselves, right?
Bitcoin Ultra, I like that. You should keep that in your pocket. I went through the same thing. I think it was that long period from 2017 to 2019 to 2020. We're not supposed to care about the price and obsess over the price all the time, but the fact is, when the price is languishing and flatlining, you go from being very engaged and checking your phone every 5 minutes to just feeling like, who cares about the price? We don't need to look at that, whatever. And it's easy to sort of lose your enthusiasm when the whole thing has just been flat for years, which is what I trailed off on it after that big initial spike in 2017. And that's around the time I did the switcheroo out of Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash, which, like, I didn't put all my Bitcoin into just Bitcoin Cash. I'm not one of those people.
You did better than
I don't know
me
if
then.
I'd be mad today, but I think some of them are mad at the exchange they got there. But Bitcoin Cash helped me decide when it was time to get out of Bitcoin, because I look at my initial reason for getting involved in the first place, which was, I was trying to think of this. I think it was that Antonopoulos guy in maybe 2014-ish. He was going on podcasts and he was talking about it, like a currency. And that's what had me interested, is the usage of it as a currency. And as it gradually turned into this investment vehicle, when everyone is just asking about it and talking about it as a means to make dollars, they're much more interested in dollars than Bitcoin. I start to realize, like, my justification for getting into it in the first place has sort of evaporated, or at least moved over here.
Yeah, I think there's so many aspects to that in cryptocurrency as well too, where I see it so much as well. And I mean, it's just the way people are. They always try to reason everything by analogy, like even like it's digital gold, or like this coin is related to this coin in this way, or crypto is a commodity, or it's whatever, and it's not any
Crypto
of those
asset.
things. Yeah, crypto asset. That's the latest tagline or way of sort of trying to move it away from being cryptocurrency. But
I've been noticing a lot of very subtle linguistic mumbo jumbo over the years, where it's no longer a cryptocurrency, it has to be a crypto asset. And the same people are always using the word investing. It's always an investment, which sort of implies that you're going to, something that you're going to hold with the expectation of future returns. Whereas if you just read the white paper, you don't come away from that thinking like, yes, this is a very sound investment that I'm going to hold and reap future returns. You just sort of think like, oh, cool, maybe I can buy a hot dog with
yeah.
this. Maybe I can buy something online without using PayPal. But all that's gone out the window now, just with some very subtle terminology changes. It's an asset, it's an investment, and the word currency, you only really hear from very particular people.
Yeah. And definitely just people have to, trying to explain to somebody like, oh, I can buy Bitcoins and then how do I sell it? And you're also like, no, you don't sell it. Like it is the money. How do I use this to make more money? No, it is the money. It's not,
Yeah.
like those kind of things you just try to explain to people, or they say like, yeah, but why would you, get paid in like Bitcoin Cash or something? It's just like, no, that's the point. But everybody's getting there very, very slowly and surely. Reality has a way of getting people across those bridges, I think. So yeah, well, I guess speaking of the price, really. So this week's price update, $702. So it's been up. In the lifespan of this podcast, it started at in the 400s, I think, and we've been up all the way up to 1500, and then now back down to 700s, and at the same time, it's also gone from when it started, it was closer to, I think, 80 or 100 to 1 with BTC. And now this week it's 51 to 1 BCH to BTC. And it's been as high as 35 and stuff like that. So it is just slowly just grinding out a few edges, I feel like. I don't know, recently have you been watching the price, or how much do you think about or follow the price? Like you already said a bit there.
Well, yeah, when we're riding high, it's obviously more fun and more compelling to constantly check your phone. And then when we're like the week that we've had, then suddenly you start going, oh, well, who cares about the price? I don't care about the price. It's all about usage. It's about adoption. Why are we talking about the price? But I I like to say, when I look at the price, I'd like to switch my frame of reference and say, the dollar, it looks like the dollar has fallen to 0.00, what would it be, 13 BCH. It's bad news for us dollar hodlers. There's anytime anytime the Bitcoin Cash price goes up,
The
we
dollar's
as
crashing.
holders of dollars
Yeah.
in our bank accounts could be saying, oh no, what are we doing holding these dollar tokens?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, people have, if they can go on bitcoincashpodcast.com, and I have a little widget on the side there that I've made up with the price, where it says the price of a 1 milli Bitcoin Cash against a euro and a dollar and all that sort of stuff. And so you can see, like, over time, as $1 buys less and less. Basically, I've still got it fixed to $1, but I guess, I guess 1 BCH to the USD price. But yeah, you definitely want to be trying to think of it in terms of like, definitely, I think of my sort of like asset values now in Bitcoin Cash rather than in dollars for the most part, I think.
Even to go before Bitcoin Cash, to look at the gold price since 1913, it's hard to even find the correct chart. I took the gold price chart and just flipped it upside down.
Yeah, exactly.
And that shows you how good of an idea it is just to hold on to dollars in relation to your purchasing power.
Just a constant
and
crash.
It's just been a complete slide since 1913.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's funny because people always see that graph of like Bitcoin going through a huge bubble, and that's how they think of it. But you just got to try and tell them, swap it around the other way. Actually, a Bitcoin is always just a Bitcoin, but just your dollar is just falling off a cliff,
Yeah, exactly.
Right, cool. So, well, we had a bit of a surge in transactions, and then it crashed off a bit. Well, it didn't really crash; it was just noise.cash started batching up transactions, and so now it was up to 140-ish thousand per day. Now it's back down to about 100,000 per day. But funnily enough, BTC, which was at the 400K and has never really gone over that because of the block size limit, has also been a bit on the decline. So. It's interesting to see, how the two sort of play into each other. I don't know how much do you follow these kind of graphs, or do you put a lot of import into that, or is it more like, oh, if I see, a new person accepting it in my area, like that's a big bullish indicator, or do you sort of believe in the stats?
Well, that is anecdotal. I do, for some reason, this chart of the number of transactions, that's what we're looking at here, right? Never interests me as much as just the dollar value being transacted.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's my own bias. And I was trying to think of why one is so much more interesting than the other. And if I reduce it, if I imagine that we go to the deserted island and we see Robinson Crusoe and his buddy Friday, and they tell you like, hey, we've been trading these shiny shells back and forth as our currency, and then they say, now we're really going to blow your mind. We've made 10,000 transactions back and forth of these shells. You'd go like, okay, well, I guess you guys really like trading those things around. I don't know. But then if they said, we have transacted $1 million this month of value back and forth, then you go, oh, okay, well now you're serious, because it sort of is tied to the tangible goods and services or whatever, the value that is exchanging. But when it's just this number of transactions flying around, you kind of go like, I don't know, is that you just sending it to yourself, or I don't know what that is.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I always have the combo. I always talk about both of those, the USD cent and the number of transactions each week, because I find they're a nice pair. Because if the you do transactions going up is good in the sense that it is important, especially on the BCH side, that people are having a lot of transactions, because if there are a lot of 1 cent or whatever transaction going around, that's proving the use case for microtransactions, which BTC can't replicate. A lot of other cryptos can't replicate, not at the scale of BCH, with keeping fees as low, and then also, but things do naturally fall on a bit of an exponential distribution, where you can have a big chunk of 0.001 transactions, but you do want to have healthy amounts then of $1 transactions, $10, $100, $1,000, and whatever. And so yeah, that's this next graph where BCH had sort of like surged up, and it did beat out BTC for a day or two in the middle there, which is really, really telling. I mean, still at 50-to-1 price ratio, and there was even just 1 or 2 days there where we were doing more, and now they've sort of spread apart a bit. But BCH it's got such a nice like upward little growth here going on, and BTC is obviously growing too. But as it grows off, there's not a thing on this chart, but you can overlay it with the amount of fees paid, and with BCH it's just flat, and with BTC it's kind of growing up alongside the value cent. So all that means is that, like in a graph, it's really important what's not on the graph too, right? So in that case, it's all the potential commerce that could have happened on BTC, which is now in Ethereum, or maybe people are just using dollars, like actual Bitcoin people. They're not trying to go to the shop and buy a hot dog, like you said. They're just like, oh, I'll use my dollars, but then I'll just hodl my Bitcoins. So I think actually we're seeing. I was really pleased when I looked at this. So that was one of the reasons that convinced me that there was something going on here, was that the transactions were spiking, but the actual USD was also kind of showing some growth too. And like with BSV, that's a problem where their transactions are through the roof and their value cent is like nothing.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, because you're more of a technician than I am. We know why the transaction number fell off a cliff when it did. It's the noise.cash bundling thing. Why would the dollars transact? Did those correlate about the same
A
time?
little bit, yeah,
May.
because if there's less, each one of those transactions, even if it is only for 1 cent, it might be that it was being sent from an address with $20 in it, and it's sending 1 cent to somebody and then 19 cents of change back. And so then, yeah, obviously, if you have two of those transactions, then it looks like you've done $40 of USD cent when really you've sent 2 cents. And then if you batch it, then you're still sending that 2 cents, but you're sending 1 cent, 1 cent, and then
Okay.
$19.98, and then it looks like it's only $20 of commerce. So they are a bit interlinked like that. But I would put, okay, so I guess maybe they are related in that way. I sort of looked at this split off a bit more, because when this happened, it was around the time that there was sort of that big crash off in BTC. And I think then that, maybe the market was sort of panicking a little bit, like a lot of people maybe were switching their BTC into BCH, or maybe, some big, like these bigger spikes up here, and especially here as well, it was when it was near 70 billion per day. That's always when the price is either rocketing up or down in BTC, because suddenly everybody with a load of coins is like, oh crap, like we're in or we're out. They're making like some big moves. So BCH maybe, and then as the price goes up in BCH as well, that means there's more value to send around too, which is something people don't. So you could overlay the price chart on this, right? So if the price of BCH doubles, then you literally have the potential ceiling for this graph is twice as high. So inevitably there will be more activity going on just by default, right? So that's where it's pretty crazy that, again, the price is like 50 to 1, and yet BCH has been up to 1 to 1, and even when it's dropped off and the gap has opened up, it's still like 5 to 1, right? So in that sense, BCH is still a 10x overperformer, and that even factors out that a 50 times bigger network in terms of price has way more liquidity and way more network effect. So it's a lot more powerful even than a 50x difference would show. So yeah, I'm not really too pessimistic about these stats for those reasons.
I saw that reminds me. I clicked on the previous slide the Coin Dance URL, and I happened to notice on there it said it is currently 1.4% more profitable to mine on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like what are we doing then? Why is the hash rate on different planets if we're actually got a little bit of edge there in the profitability?
Well, so what happens is that if you look on there's a really good graph on that. Maybe we can even just look it up. I'll see if I can just find it right now. But there's a graph that shows the profitability, and it always basically regresses back to 1. Let me see if I can find it just quickly. But here we go. Okay, well now it's 4.5% more profitable. Where is it here? Must be here. Statistics maybe. Fees, rewards, profitability. That was the one I should have clicked on. So the point is that it fluctuates around 1 to 1. Please show me this graph. I know exactly what it looks like, but it just maybe I'm gonna have to find it later. But it's basically a line, and the line is on 1, and it goes slightly above and then slightly below, right, based on the profit parity. So at the moment, because the price, like we saw, is about 50 to 1, what happens is, therefore, the miners split about 50 to 1, right? So Bitcoin Cash has about 2% of the hash rate. So if it goes marginally up, let's say it goes up to 45 to 1, then obviously, because the price goes up 45 to 1, then Bitcoin Cash becomes slightly more profitable, and it will suck a tiny little bit of the hash rate out of Bitcoin. But it obviously doesn't happen immediately because the blocks on both chains are just mined sort of at random intervals, right? And also the miners are not perfectly elastic, right? They're just in a coordinated, mess of like, one of them's kind of like, oh, this is 1% more profitable, let me switch now. But by the time they've switched, some other ones have also kind of, switched over or whatever. They don't like keep it at exactly perfect. I really wish I could find this graph, but yeah, so like I don't think everybody, this is something that you don't intuitively know about because it's such a unique case as well. People come into crypto and they have to learn, the BTC, BCH mining dynamic is unique to those two coins. It doesn't happen on, well, it also happens with BSV a bit, but it's not like, Litecoin and different coins have this kind of dynamic because they don't have those forks really. So
I'm just hoping all your listeners don't know this stuff inside and out, and that I'm just boring them, making you repeat things you already know. Because if they don't, I'm happy to be here as the Joe Schmo dummy who can ask on their behalf. Because I find this stuff really interesting, but I haven't necessarily gone into it myself.
No, that's what this podcast is for. And I don't think most people know all the details of all this, and B, even if they did, it never hurts to hear it again, right? Because somebody's always hearing it for the first time, right? So I think that's fine. So yeah, they just, as the price changes, they do suck a little bit of the hash rate out of each other, but it's not perfect. So if you watch that stat that we were looking at there on the coin.dance, you'll see it probably won't get up to more than about 4 or 5%, because at that point it really is profitable for, somebody to switch over. And then, but of course the prices are also just independently fluctuating the whole time as well too. So the individual miners kind of operate, as they see fit. Right, so in the news this week, and just today, I saw AMC, which is the American cinema chain, has started going absolutely to the moon, which is interesting because they were the sort of the second bet on the Wall Street bets after GameStop, where GameStop was over shorted, and so the Redditors were all sort of ganging up on the hedge fund to buy and hold the stock, and essentially force the hedge funds to pay them out a limitless amount of money, in theory, which is why we saw a couple months ago, I think it was episode 2 of this podcast, where it went from, whatever it was, $20 up to like $400, and there was a whole mania about it for a few days, and now it went back down. But now it's still like $200, so it's still way overvalued relative to the amount of shops and like the financial health of the company. But at that time, we can see here in this graph, AMC, people started looking at what are other stocks that are also in this same category. And unlike GME was unique in that it was the only one that had more than 100% shorts. So with AMC, you couldn't print literally an infinite amount of money, but you could definitely get some money. And of course, also with the attention being on these stocks, people were going to jump in that. So they went into that, and that spiked up about the same time, and then it kind of fell off. And then I guess in the meantime, things have been rumbling away in the world. And then just in the last couple of days, it's gone from like $12 back up to $30, and maybe it's just going to take off, right? So I just want to, I don't have any AMC stocks. I did for a little bit in here. Okay. Yeah, so you had your mate who was diamond handing AMC.
Yeah, he got into it at the tail end of the initial thing, or like when it was going on, and I go, don't buy it now. You're like 3 days too late. Now's not when you buy it. You're supposed, before the run up. But he went for it anyway, and I'm so surprised that he gets a second bite at the apple. That these things rarely come back around and give everyone who missed out the first time another shot at it. It's the weirdest thing. Because though anytime it's gone up like $1, I've been like, okay, you better sell that thing. Like, this is stupid. Like, what scenario? Like, it's happened already. The shorters have had to buy their positions, and it's over. And now you're just holding Blockbuster, basically. We can't visualize any future in which digital content is something that we now need to go show up in person again for. So what are you doing? But I am wrong. It's up where it doesn't belong, at least technically.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of like sort of conspiracy theories and stuff about that as well too. I think a large part of it is that it was kind of like, well, all these shorts need to sort of buy back the stocks and everything, and that's going to push up the price. But then nobody really knows like when they've actually done that, or it's it only gets announced like every couple months or something as to is it still at 70% shorts, or is it now 60%, or is it now 20%? Nobody really knows until kind of after the fact, right? So I think there's a lot of, definitely if you go read on reddit.com/r/Wall Street bets, you can get everybody's opinion as to what is going on, right? So I haven't been following that story.
I can't go in there anymore. They ruined it.
Yeah, I can't. It's too hard. It's too much like speculation.
Too many emojis.
Yeah, all those rocket to the moons. But anyway, I wanted to call them out because they're battling away, against the financial system, same as us. So good to see them making some inroads, and it really puts a lot of spotlight, I think, on the whole cryptocurrency movement, where a lot of people are not interested in cryptocurrency, but they see this kind of stuff going on, and they, it helps them click then when they talk about crypto that, okay, it's kind of the same tribe, that fuck the banks and all that kind of stuff, right? Yep. So we also had this week Elon looking at Dogecoin. So he has been sort of poking around in Dogecoin a bit, but he kind of upped the ante a bit here with saying like if people want to be Dogecoin developers, and that he was going to be talking to the Dogecoiners and even this bizarre comments about he was talking to North American Bitcoin miners and kind of trying to encourage them to have some sort of green council or conglomerate or something, which was all very weird because, that's really what Bitcoin had back in the day. But the whole point is it's decentralized and nobody's in charge. So Elon's kind of come in and has now, in both in Bitcoin and in Dogecoin, he's sort of become the focal point for a lot of what's going on, and especially because everybody's just focused on the price, and he can obviously hype up the price, at least at the moment, before everybody gets sick of it. It's just all sort of focused in around him, and it's just very odd that he's trying to sort of jam it in and shoehorn it with Dogecoin rather than realizing, like, wait, Dogecoin needs to raise their block size and they need lower fees and they need to have more developers, and all that stuff is already rolling on Bitcoin Cash. I guess it just seems he keeps seeing this thing every time I see him say, he always says, fate loves irony, the most entertaining outcome is the most likely. It's sort of this wishful thinking that he really wants it to be that Doge can get there, or suddenly the whole everything will just come together with Doge because it's a meme and it would be funny. But the fact is, yeah, sure, it's funny and it has its place and it goes through speculative manias, but in terms of actually having developers that are willing to spend years of their life making full node clients and showing up on Skype meetings every week and whatever, like it just doesn't have that staying power.
The situation is that we need to entice Elon by making BCH the funniest outcome. Can we be funnier than that dog?
Maybe
Bitcoin Cash needs a cute, lovable mascot, or maybe we can come up with some way to make us the funnier choice.
This is a good idea. Like maybe we need like some sort of, I'm imagining like one of those sports things, some like person dressed up in like a green outfit with a big like cash sign, or like a hammerhead shark or Bitcoin, something with the cash, like a dollar bill at the top.
The Bitcoin Cash cashew. He's like Mr. Peanut, but he's a cashew.
The Bitcoin Cash cashew. Oh man, that could be it. That really.
I mean, people, and I always, they don't want his attention. We don't want him to notice us. We don't want all that irrational speculation and all those people coming in. And to that, I feel, okay, yeah, we'll just stay an insular little community and only let people in who take it very seriously and understand the whole mission. No, if we're trying to be cash for the world, you need everyone in there, even people that you don't like, and even people who are in there for dumb reasons. And any speculator or whoever wants to be involved, that's not bad news. Like if he calls out or if he acknowledges Bitcoin Cash, I can't think in any world that's a bad outcome.
Yeah, no, we definitely do. I mean, I think it's really just a case of people trying to sort of walk the line, right? Because like as Dogecoin are doing it, haha, it's funny, but because it's funny, it struggles to be consistent or maintain people's interest. I think I would have a hard time doing a Dogecoin podcast every single week where it was haha to the moon funny, like the joke gets a bit old, right? So I mean, definitely we want to be appealing and stuff like that, but I think it's okay that the community is a bit hardcore, but it just needs to advertise a little bit better, because that foundation, it's a lot easier to add the advertising and draw in people on a network that technically is very sound than it is to draw in a lot of people and then somehow sort of scramble around to find some developers and, piece it all together, at least in my mind. So hopefully we'll see some more of that with some different kind of marketing stuff coming out of Bitcoin Cash over the next couple of years. I could see that as being more likely than Dogecoin suddenly getting a lot of developers that want to really knuckle down and spend years grinding.
He's meeting with them. He's meeting with those developers, though.
What developers? Like
they're in a smoky room. They're getting down to it right now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's got so many other things on his plate. Like, He's busy trying to launch rockets and make the Boring Company and make Neuralink and Tesla and batteries and all this stuff. Really, does he have all day to sit around with some Dogecoin developers? No, if the Dogecoin developers are not independently kicking it off, then I don't think he's going to make it do it. He just doesn't have enough time in the day. And even as kind of, crazy or wild as he is, I cannot see him just pouring endless money down the drain on something that he can tell is independently not really got the legs for it. So I don't know.
Has he said he's got a position in Dogecoin? I don't remember. Is he just goofing around?
Technically, I don't think he's really ever confirmed it, but I did see a really good article that was about somebody analyzing there is a wallet which about the time that he was started all the tweets and everything, literally bought $1.5 billion in Dogecoin. And it's like, there's not that many people in the world that can afford $1.5 billion in
Right.
Dogecoin. And that, it's not an exchange because they would be sending in and out and stuff like that. And just that of all the people in the world who have $1.5 billion, well, they're not going to YOLO 100% of it into Dogecoin, right? So you're looking at people who actually have like 50 billion. And then of those people, there's only a handful in the world, and not many of them are necessarily going to be like, let me just buy 1 billion Dogecoin. So
There is a reaction. If I've noticed it, I'm pretty sure he's noticed it. So the SEC is probably not going to get after him for Dogecoin as quick as some stock.
yeah, and that's true. But he's running out his welcome. Like the more I think he sort of had his time in the spotlight of announcing himself in the crypto scene and sort of making some comments and stuff. I'm sure he'll still be able to move the market a little bit, but as time goes on, his tweets are just going to become more and more irrelevant because everybody's just going to think, yeah, Elon's tweeting again. Like, what else is new? There'll be a newer, better thing going on in crypto. So yeah, I'm hoping I'll stop putting as much about him on the slides, to be honest, unless there's really big news where he adopts Bitcoin Cash or something, because yeah, I mean, I'm a bit over it as well too. So also,
Does anyone believe that this environmental thing is the real reason for anything?
I don't really think it doesn't even really make any sense where suddenly it just seems the environmental angle, like I haven't done an episode about the environmental impact of crypto, but it's been shown that crypto already has a strong amount of renewable energy in it, and the economic incentives are such that over time, especially as the block reward decreases, then the amount of energy spent will be directly proportional to whatever is needed to sustain the amount of transactions that there are on the network. So in that way, it would actually be very, very efficient. And if it can replace the whole banking sector, it would be massive because of how much global power usage there is there, and probably most of the gold mining as well too. So there, it would be fine in that front, but it's just so weird because this whole environmental stuff has started up in the last like 6 months maybe, and it's just that
I've seen all these articles that just state cryptocurrency uses too much energy. Bitcoin uses too much energy. And like, compared to what? That's an incomplete argument. You can't just say it's too much without comparing it to a similar thing.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe at the moment, for the small amount of relative world commerce it does, it is a bit overhyped. But the point is that it's got the potential, to just completely flip out. And as the transactions and usage goes up, that's not necessarily correlated to the mining. So it gets more efficient over time rather than less, or at least Bitcoin Cash does.
Bitcoin Cash has this is another thing I don't understand. Bitcoin Cash, I can see pushing out banking, gold, everything else. But when Bitcoin Core people talk about Bitcoin like we do about Bitcoin Cash, we're going to take over the world. It's all going to be Bitcoin. What are they talking about? I don't know what are they visualizing there, because they're not trying to sell it as a currency anymore. And yet here they are going, well, you just wait until we've taken over the world. What does that mean?
I don't know. I think it's just an in crowd. It's just a story that they're all telling themselves. I mean, and I did use a Lightning wallet the other day. At the meetup, this guy got me to download it and sent me a little bit. And I mean, it was fine. It was actually very similar to the $1 Bitcoin Cash that I sent him, on chain. But the problem was, like, even at the surface level, I mean, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash have been split now for 4 or 5 years, and they're just starting to get to the point of having that same kind of functionality when they should have just raced way ahead. They didn't have any chaos, they didn't have anything, and they've just kind of got to that point. But even then, it just falls apart once you look at the more fundamental aspects, like the fees on chain are going up over time, and there's no plan basically to stop that. So as the fees go up higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, there's even to use the Lightning Network, you have to open a Lightning channel, and that costs you money. And so it's just a nightmare. But the more, yeah, I don't know, it's just this story that they're kind of telling them each other, and that's why it's been very odd for me. We'll talk about this later as well. In London, there's been all these Bitcoin ads, buy Bitcoin everywhere, and that was like the future. That was what was imagined as, wow, one day if crypto was everywhere, that's what it would be. But there's these ads everywhere, but there was nobody actually using Bitcoin. You're still not. You don't see people just trading it around you or whatever, except for maybe at some of these crypto meetups, which have been really good. But
Yeah.
I don't know, just wasn't there, right? So
did you pay the fee to open the
No, I
channel
didn't.
and then the fee to close the channel?
That's
all that
right. That's
stuff?
why it was the weirdest thing, because I was sort of trying to figure it out while we were standing there, because he sent me a couple of satoshis, like 900 satoshis or something. So it was a couple of cents, and I got it, and it was all fine. But I was trying to figure out. So I said, like, do I have the private keys? Is this my custodial wallet? And it was sort of like, yeah, I don't know. Like, and then I tried Googling it. I was trying to figure out what's going on here, because there's no way this has come to me on the blockchain. So it must just be in the Breeze's like wallet database or something like that. But then that's not really a crypto transaction.
I've also tried Googling it. Not to be, I am open to be convinced, but it's a Rube Goldberg machine. It doesn't sound good. I'm happy that you tried it though. That's interesting.
I was happy to give it a go. I mean, it was great to receive some and just sort of be on the other end of that experience of getting introduced to something in crypto. I did actually enjoy it. It was really cool and interesting. But the thing was, even though on the surface it seemed the same as me giving out people $1 Bitcoin Cash on chain with their own keys in their wallet, even though it seemed the same with, just download this app, just scan this QR code and then just send it. So in that way it seemed the same, but I was just sure that as soon as I started digging into it, and I tried looking up their website later on and trying to read how did this all work, and there just wasn't really that much detail, and obviously there's no way I can have it because he only sent me 10 cents, so that transaction would never have processed on the actual B2C network. So yeah, I don't know.
That wouldn't go through. That's what I was thinking. Wouldn't it be cheaper to just send you the 10 cents and pay the one fee than to pay the fee to open the channel and the fee to close the channel? You can't just move 10 cents and pay a ridiculous fee more than 10 cents?
Yeah, well, I don't know. He didn't pay any fee, so that's why I felt like it had to just be some sort of on-chain, not on-chain, off-chain type, database thing that this Breeze wallet. I don't know. I still am a bit mystified, to be honest, really. But I was like, there's clearly some shenanigans going on here. But it was cool, and I mean, maybe they can onboard a decent amount of people in that way, but I can't, and then as soon as you want to send from one wallet to another wallet, there's going to be incompatibility issues, or you're going to have problems with the Lightning routing, or somebody, the government's going to sit on one of those Lightning nodes and, switch it off at a convenient moment to just sort of screw up the whole network, or like, there's just so many points of weakness, I think, in that system, really. All right, so
Sounds cool though.
yeah,
Lightning.
it's got a cool name. It's got good branding. Yeah, definitely. Better than
Yep.
Segregated Witness, which has terrible branding. So we've got something as well here. This was an interesting thing for me, particularly. The listeners may or may not know, but the largest trading card game in the world is called Magic the Gathering, and it's sort of like Pokemon cards, basically, where you have elves and dwarves and whatever. It's this huge trading card game, very very popular. It's been around since 1994, and I play it, on and off, especially in the last, year or so. I know a few guys in London, so I play with them sometimes. And they're famous for, in the cards, they do loads of pop culture references, right? So they've done like Harry Potter recently, and King Arthur, legends and stuff like that, but they can't directly say it because they'll infringe on people's IP, but they take the ideas of things that are sort of in the cultural consciousness and they put them into the game. And so they recently made this card called Loris, Cryptozoologist, which tellingly has the ability Investigate, which is investigate is already one of the abilities in the game, but it has invest, and it's a scout, a snake elf scout, so it's kind of like looking forward into the future, and it lets you make these tokens and then cash them in to buy cards from the other players. So to me, it seems like this is their little hint at crypto, and I just found it very fascinating that it's now at that kind of layer of cultural consciousness on the scale of something like Harry Potter or, King Arthur myths. I don't know. Have you ever played Magic, or do you know what this is about?
A kid tried to get me into it when I was a kid, and I think he was visiting, and then he left, and his cards left with him,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, I don't know. There's that word again, invest. The power should have been spend and replace, or cast and replenish, or something.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows? Maybe it was BTC, Bitcoin, designing this card or something like that. But I just found this is just so sneaky that it is just getting into the mind share of the population. I think very, very interesting. And then we saw as well PayPal, who have now a couple of weeks ago, I'm pretty sure I announced it on this show as well. They had BTC, BCH, ETH, and LTC you could buy in your PayPal wallet, and it was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but also, but you can't withdraw it, as we were just talking about. You can't put it on the Lightning Network, can't withdraw it to your basic Bitcoin Cash wallet, can't do this, can't do that. And so it was really just like a walled garden fake crypto tokens. But surprisingly to me, actually, it seems that they've swapped it around, and now they're actually going to let you withdraw your crypto. So now PayPal is essentially a cryptocurrency exchange, maybe not a very low fee one or anything, but millions, billions, I don't know if it's billions, but maybe millions of people have PayPal wallets. And so now if somebody says to you, oh, how can I get into crypto? You can say, look, just buy $5 on your PayPal account and withdraw it right there. Like, they haven't implemented this yet, but they claim that they're going to be putting in the withdrawals out to different wallets and services, and that kind of realistically does add it to the cryptocurrency ecosystem. So that's pretty massive news, I think.
Do we know anything about the fees? I can't imagine we're paying sub-penny fees to move BCH around.
I mean, BTC maybe. Like, BCH probably they should be... Hopefully it will be low fees. But yeah, well, that's another thing as well. Are we going to find out here, because the problems with BTC become more acute the more people there are getting involved, right? It just gets worse and worse. So is it going to be the case that people are going to buy $5 of BTC and then naturally people just try and spend it? They're like, it's cryptocurrency, right? And they try and send it to somewhere, and then it pops up a message saying, oh, you've got $5 and it's going to cost you $4 to send this, and it might take up to an hour, and people are going to think, what the hell? And then maybe they look at the other options and they say, oh, look, at BCH, it's only 1 cent, and Ethereum, it's still $5, and LTC, it's, $2 or one, I don't know what their fees are, right? But I think that will be
unless they inflict BTC fees coins to just make us think that they're all equal.
Well, we might see that, and that would be interesting as well.
I've had a chip on my shoulder about PayPal since the late 90s. It is a walled garden. It maybe they got better, but I mean, this is good for word of mouth, but they've always bugged me how you end up with your funds locked up, fees, whatever else. In fact, PayPal sucking is probably partially responsible for me getting into crypto in the first place. Just the idea of being able to send some money without that intermediary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many of these there's PayPal and Venmo and whatever have you. There's all these different apps which are sort of more integrated into, they've got their tentacles into the existing financial system, right? Of the banks and the regulations and, millions of dollars being spent on lawyers and all this kind of crap. And so as those companies come into crypto, I think it's just a very interesting waypoint where the whole point of crypto is if everybody had Bitcoin Cash, PayPal is done, their business is over, right? So
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how they can sort of stay in the middle somehow, right?
Yeah, if anyone told me they were going to involve PayPal in their crypto usage, I definitely, try to stop them. It's like involving a VHS player in your home media server. Like, isn't this the exact specific thing that we improved upon, that we're trying to replace?
Yeah.
But whatever. It's good for people who haven't interacted with crypto at all and are new to it. Sure, fine.
Yeah, it kind of gives them something in it. And it is interesting to see those business interests getting entrenched, because now everybody who's a competitor to PayPal, they're in the same position. They can't be like, well, we don't have crypto because, otherwise they just look like they're behind the game and stuff, which obviously they are, right? But once
They are.
once one of them breaks free, from the herd, the rest of them all have to sort of pile in afterwards. They don't really have a lot of choice, right? So then I've got a whole series of slides here, which is basically about regulations in different countries. So we saw this week, it was quite a turbulent week in that respect, although I didn't really bat an eyelid, but I guess from a big picture, that China has been looking to ban Bitcoin mining, which they have done several times before. They've banned it and unbanned it and banned it and unbanned it. And there's still obviously tons of mining that goes on in China, and also it being China, it's whether something is banned or is not banned can heavily depend on, who kind of thing. So there's a lot of that going on, but they sort of wanted to crack down on this a little bit, and they cracked down on some of their exchanges as well too, because of capital flight out of the country, that people were using cryptocurrencies to move money out from the control of the central government. So it sort of makes sense that they would get a bit involved there. But yeah, they basically banned it, unbanned it. I mean, probably if you've been in crypto for a few years, you would have seen this, right? That they've banned it and unbanned it a few times.
Mm-hmm. I mean, capital flight out of the country. I don't think that they said that that was the reason. When you look at the reasons, it's always money laundering, drug trafficking,
The environment.
the environment, smuggling. Like I think we can all recognize those as excuses, and the actual reason. Like I can see why they're on the fence, because if you're China, you want your country to be rich, but you don't necessarily want your people to be individually powerful, and like they want the technological supremacy, but that whole decentralized thing can't sit very well with them. So I can see them sort of waffling, not wanting to get into it too far, but they don't want to be behind on it either.
Yeah, and that's what every country is kind of in that. And yeah, China is just a very unique case because A, they're a huge economic power, and then B, yeah, they have a very unique relationship between their political and their economic system, especially these days where they have sort of freed their markets up somewhat, because it was just not possible to sustain strict central control and continual economic growth. It just doesn't happen that way. But yeah, they are trying to sort of find the line. So they sort of were like, well, we're going to ban Bitcoin. And then Iran have been banning crypto mining as well, because they've been having power blackouts, and the government blamed a lot of this on cryptocurrency mining. Very hard to tell in this case. That could definitely have been a part of it. I don't know whether that was more of an excuse or more of a reality. I don't know anything about Iran or about the stability of their energy grid, really. But what I didn't know was that there is 4.5% of Bitcoin mining happens in Iran, and they've actually been in the past relatively friendly to it, because it's a way of them drawing income into their country that avoids United States trade sanctions, which I did not know about. I mean, I knew they had those trade sanctions, but I didn't ever think of Bitcoin mining as being sort of one way around it to get, a few extra 100 million kind of going on. So they've done that, and this ban is for a 4-month time limit, which is very interesting. Unlike China, who just bans it and then suddenly unbans it, this is sort of a bit of it's like a crypto-friendly ban, because if they put a time limit on it, it's kind of like, we're already giving you the sense it's going to be back, guys. Don't worry about that. It's just more like they need to let their grid stabilize a bit or something.
I read a couple of Iran articles. It was interesting. Like one thing I haven't seen anywhere else, that they allow cryptocurrencies mined in Iran to pay for the import of goods, which help it get around the sanctions. But what they have always forbidden, that you can't trade cryptocurrencies that are mined abroad. They've got sort of a made in Iran policy. So if you want to generate new crypto to trade with other countries for actual goods, that's fine. But they say don't be trading anything of value from out of here in exchange for crypto. So it's got sort of a logic to it. Like if you're some goods into here, we need those, but they don't like it so much that they want their citizens just sitting on a bunch of crypto that they've traded money and goods for.
Yeah, that's very odd. I hadn't heard or thought about that either. And like you're saying, it does have sort of a sideways kind of government logic to it, which is like, well, we'll permit it to the extent that it kind of benefits us directly, or that we're bringing capital into the country. But essentially, trade operates in two directions. So if you're sort of artificially trying to limit it to only flowing in one way, or only in certain scenarios or something, that's kind of breaks down over time, right? Because it's hard to enforce that, or draw the lines of when it was okay, when it was. And I imagine enforcement is probably a nightmare too, if you're allowed to have crypto for some reasons but not other reasons. And I mean, yeah, how are the police or whoever, the regulators, going to be like, oh, well, you got this crypto in this weird way that we weren't okay with? Or so you could just say, yeah, no, but my mate mined it, and then I don't know.
Yeah, that's another. I read another thing, or I guess it was the same article, but they said that 85% of the miners in Iran are operating without a license. So they banned it for 4 months. Why would they care about the ban? They were already doing it illegally. So the minority of legal miners have to say, okay, yeah, we'll shut down. But the rest of them,
Just crack on.
what do they care if it's they were already breaking the law?
Yeah, true. True. Well, I guess this is the beauty of cryptocurrency, really, is that individuals can take their own risk, and it's just spread out across the population, right, according to their own scenarios. Like, I'm sure those miners in Iran probably have the best understanding of, maybe that's really risky because maybe the government does come in and arrest them all, or maybe it's not risky at all because the government just kind of turns a blind eye to it, or maybe they have a connection and they sort of are feeding some money into the right pockets and it's all fine. Like,
Right.
So very, very hard to like speculate from the outside, but it is sort of a market force in the sense that the local, people have the most information and they're the ones making decisions with their own risk at stake. So that's kind of perfect for the incentives to drive in the right direction, I think.
I wouldn't think jail in Iran is a real treat, but if 85% of the miners are operating illegally, then it must be kind of
Or
okay.
at least, yeah, they're willing to run the run the risk. We've got the U.S. regulators also kind of looking at urgently. Apparently, this is the new thing. It's urgently working on the joint cryptocurrency regulations. Fed's Quals, I don't even know. Maybe that's somebody in the Fed, says it's high priority, right? So I think this is just interesting, which is that there's kind of been, government is slow. Government is really, really, really slow. Crypto has been on the radar now for years and years and years. And about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, the huge worry was, are we going to get regulated? And is this going to happen? And there's been various kind of regulations, but across all the different international jurisdictions, and also because crypto companies and individuals, it tends to flow around the globe so fast, the Bitcoin companies and the crypto companies and investors and whatever, they're sort of a bit okay with some uncertainty because they can just sort of arbitrage themselves into wherever is kind of crypto friendly at that time. And because there's so many changes of scheme and different this and that, obviously it's not good for the scene that everybody has to deal with all this rubbish and changes in regulation all the time. But the fact is, the scene is pretty adept by now at sort of operating flexibly to that. And the fact is that the technology just blasts ahead at 1,000,000 miles an hour every single day. So while the regulators are busy debating their one regulation, and then what about this and what about that, and everything. By the time they've got that through in a year's time, the tech has already just made whatever restrictions they had obsolete by the next smart contracts or decentralized whatever, or there's always some new loophole that's able to be exploited. And so, as well as the fact that the US regulators, well, now it's urgent, but they've got a lot of things on their plate. The government cannot fight every single battle at once. And so cryptocurrency is not one that they really have the resources to address or to beef with, because at the same time, government has to look after healthcare and education and transport and home affairs and internal security and external security, and there's 101 things that they need to worry about. So cryptocurrency comes up on the radar as a big grief once every while, and it gets a bit of attention, and then it sort of falls off the agenda, and then by the time they look at it again, it's like completely different and they're way out of touch again, right? So I think it's definitely interesting to see this sort of government inefficiency being outcompeted by technology.
It's looking pretty tough politically to make a real ban happen in the USA at this point as well. Like, I've read that 50 million Americans have interacted with Bitcoin at this point. Like, that's a lot of votes. And now that there's ETFs and everything, like, you're just going to tell some financial group to just liquidate their ETF. Like, that's not something China and Iran, I guess, have to worry about, is what an unpopular move it would be. And when you read the list of countries that have tried to do like a total ban, it's like a who's who of non-free speech type countries, Egypt and Afghanistan, and I had the list somewhere, but it's anywhere that you can think of that sounds like they wouldn't be very friendly to individual liberty. That's who was first to try and do a blanket ban.
And then all those countries have just slowly kind of realized, because any one country can ban it, or they can have their own regulations or whatever, but they're just fighting that on like about 5 different fronts at the same time. One is that their own population is getting more and more interested, more and more invested, more and more purchasing is going on. Another one is that the industry is developing in their country, so whoever it is that is involved, like exchanges that start in their country, or any business that is accepting crypto, or whatever lobbying power they have, or any marketing or things that they're just independently doing, well, that's also sort of spreading around crypto and making it harder to kind of backtrack on. And the more they'll disrupt things and cause grief in their own economy, then people in the government themselves, they might also be like, wow, this is the trend, and they've bought some, so then they're kind of, let me just stall out a bit on these votes, and we'll just let crypto kick off a bit more because I've got some, so I kind of want that moving in the right direction. And I don't know, there's just no way, right?
Well, it's urgent because it's a little late.
It's definitely now it is a bit late, and so. That's what we're seeing as well. So as we mentioned before, there's been these Bitcoin Luno ads, which I've had on the show before, because I took even some of my own photos of them around the place because I thought it was good. And they had this text, if you're seeing Bitcoin on the underground, it's time to buy. And these ads have been everywhere. I can't undersell how prominent they've been, probably for the last 4 months or so. Like, I mean, even it's been a pandemic, so there hasn't been everybody being out and about necessarily, but they've been all over the underground, the London Underground. There's millions of people going through that every single day, and these posters have been everywhere on them. And they've also been on the red buses that tourists, think of when they think of London. Everywhere, if you're seeing Bitcoin on the, on a bus, it's time to buy. And whenever I saw those ads, I would just think about how many people, it's like a sci-fi or like Mr. Robot episode or something like that, where 5 years ago, if you thought of the future and they made a scene of what it would be like in 10 years time, you would expect to see, there would just be crypto ads and crypto services around the place because it would have taken over. And now we're living in that world, but the ads have got there before the population adopting it did, because Bitcoin was obviously the brand leader and it's not usable peer-to-peer. And so there's been so many people seeing this, crypto, this, that, and the other. And now these ads have got banned, which Probably I don't philosophically support, but I do understand the reasoning for it, because it is essentially just pumping Bitcoin to like people who don't know anything about it. So it is that kind of questionable financial advice. There's not necessarily a lot of disclaimers on this, like investing at your own risk or whatever. And as a result, yeah, they have now finally got banned. But once again, there would have been millions of people would have seen this over and over too, not just once. It would have been like, say it 5, 10, 15 times. So it really has just settled into the population's mind as like crypto is here to stay, I think.
It's I think when I look at that ad, I actually kind of message of the ad. I actually think the opposite. When something is when the price is going up on something due to buzz, and you start seeing Bitcoin on the underground, basically, that's kind of how I decided to get transition out of BTC at the other peak, when people who have no interest in decentralized currency, when your grandma starts going like, hey, what's this whole Bitcoin thing, then I started like, maybe this is getting a little too speculative right now. And what was I going to say? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, buy the rumor, sell the news, right? Like if everybody's when your whatever it's called, like when your shoe shiner is telling you about this hot stock, that's past the
Right there,
peak.
yeah, exactly. And what else was I going to say? The one of the other justifications that I'll see all the time when I look up who's tried to ban crypto is it's always for your own protection. It's always, save the children, and this justification is always, hey, people could lose money here. What is inherently wrong with losing money? If you lost it in a bad trade, it went to someone who made a good trade. If you block the guy from making the bad trade, then aren't you also blocking the other guy from making the good trade? Like, even if I think that they're advertising a scam, whatever, let people decide for themselves.
Yeah, it's very interesting too as well that this whole cryptocurrency thing has shown up a huge deficit in essentially the global. It's not even just specifically in the UK or in the US or in Australia or really any, or in China or anywhere. It's just globally created this like renaissance in financial education of individuals having to figure this shit out for themselves, because obviously there's the stock market and all that, so people who are interested can read up on that and learn about that and get involved in that. But with crypto, it's just opened this whole new frontier that a lot of people who were not interested in shares and stocks and how does it equity get distributed around to different people and all these different things, for one reason or another, maybe it was just Dogecoin and they were like, haha, this is funny, and they wanted to get some and trade it. And then that has taught them about, how does the market work? How are prices set? And how do things trade against each other? And what if that's hyped this week and not another week? And all that stuff, which goes on in the stock market, but only, at a much slower pace. And now everybody's got the crash course in crypto by buying some and holding it and seeing it for themselves. It's a bit more accessible. Despite being new, it's still more accessible than stock investing. So because it's so meme driven, I guess. So it's really been fascinating that so much of the world, it's taken this advent of this technology for so much of the world to get interested in money when it's something that everybody uses pretty much every day, right?
Yeah, even just my own anecdotal experience, it definitely got me interested in the stock market and reading the history of money. And I wouldn't have been the guy before who's reading about inflation and reading Hazlitt and all the rest of it. But just watching my initial tiny amount of money turn into a different amount of money makes you kind of curious about how the whole thing works. And absolutely, it drove my interest big time.
Yeah. And so then so it's all been doom and gloom, crypto getting banned here, there, and everywhere. But we've got here also in the same week an example of cryptocurrency getting unbanned. So this was a few months ago. I'm not sure whether I mentioned it on the show. I might have or I might not have. But Nigeria banned Bitcoin and said, okay, that's enough. This cryptocurrency, it's a bit much. And Nigeria is actually one of the most crypto interested countries in the world. If you go and look on Google search and you look for Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and cryptocurrencies, Nigeria has the highest per capita, I think, probably in the entire world, of people, the highest search volume. And then they have also, they have been, banning it and stuff like that. But I don't know whether the government there is necessarily super effective in how it's able to enforce those kind of laws. And so obviously there's been a bit of back and forth going on in their community. And so now they have unbanned it again after every 4 months. And so this is where I'm not particularly concerned about if the US or Iran or China, like we just saw, were banning it or regulating it or doing whatever, because before too long they're going to be in this same situation of flipping back the other way, because countries cannot ignore the massive amounts of consumer and business demand for cryptocurrencies, which is constantly growing. And if they ban it or restrict it or regulate it, it just starts up somewhere else. And the whole world is connected, right? Especially in finance, the whole world is connected. And if everybody sees their cousin who is in the next country trading these cryptos and loving it, they want to say, I want to do that too, right? So it's just not tenable for any severe length of time, whatever entrenched interest in the banking sector or whatever. Obviously they're trying to sort of slow it down to their own benefit, but essentially they've all realized that they can't stop it. So it's really just a question of who is involved and who's bought up as much of it as possible before it just becomes obvious that it's going to take over.
The whole cryptocurrency is used mostly for illegal activities. Mostly. I don't think it's close to mostly. It may be, I don't know about Nigeria, but it seems to be another canard every time you look into it. I was just Googling, like, trying to find out, well, what proportion of Bitcoin is used in illegal activities. And the top results, you'll get articles saying, 45%, 25%. And when people actually look into it, chain analysis, they seem to be quite thorough in trying to figure this out. I wrote down in 2019, it was 2.1% criminal activity. Yeah. In 2020, it was 0.34% that they could say was probably criminal activity. And yet this whole thing is always being pushed that cryptocurrency encourages or is disproportionately used in criminal activity. Let me read my note here. According to the UN, it's estimated that between 2% and 5% of global GDP is connected with money laundering and illicit activity. So regular fiat currency is more popular to use for illegal activity than crypto, and yet we're constantly hearing how we're encouraging illegal activity, therefore it needs to be banned, therefore it needs to be regulated. It doesn't seem to stand up.
Yeah, and people know that, I think, especially if you wind back a few years when it was more fringe. It's easier to sell people basically on a scare story that, it's all drugs and illegal, it's all the end of the world or whatever. But then, like you're saying, let's say it is, 0.5%, or whatever, that's like 1 in 200 people. That means there's 199 people that have crypto, or they're friends trading it or whatever, and they know, and they just think, that's just crypto. That's not anything too sketchy or to be worried about going on there. So those narratives just can't hold up as it gets to a broader and broader segment of the population, really.
Yeah, exactly. I will say though, I sell little greeting cards and stuff on Etsy, and in my crypto life, I try out each little thing that comes along at least once. So noise.cash and Cash Fusion, and making the little QR code to send somebody $1. So earlier on, I was selling cards on that, what was that thing called? Open Bazaar.
Oh, right.
Remember
Did that get shut down? I thought that stopped.
Yeah, it got shut down. It went away. I don't
know.
It was a pain.
Right.
It was. I don't think it worked as a website when I was using it. You had to open this Windows application and sign in. It wasn't great, but anyway, I was just remembering how I was selling a legit innocent product, but the majority of other products on there, it's all people's medication and magic mushrooms and like
the classics.
That was a few years ago.
Yeah. I don't really know what happened to Open Bazaar either, because I did the same thing where I thought, wait, this could actually be huge. And it was kind of like because the Silk Road was big in the early days of crypto. And so it made sense that if you just had a decentralized version of that, that would be super popular. And probably for
That's
a
what we
lot of
need.
stuff that was not just, drugs and whatever, but would be just all regular stuff, just sort of peer to peer, like Free Cycle or,
Just
yeah,
eBay.
exactly, eBay, whatever. So I opened it up and I tried installing a node and everything. Yeah, it was still just too unuser friendly at that time, and then I lost interest in it. And then by the time I checked in on it again, it's like all development had stopped, and I don't know,
Yep.
whoever got all the donations for that project, they were probably just in the Bahamas or something now on the beach. So I don't really know, but whatever.
Yeah, it fell apart. But that's what I would most like to see is just like an eBay where one of the things that made me interested in cryptocurrency in the first place is just how annoying it is to transact online where I need to participate in this weird credit card thing where I don't want to borrow any money. I have money, and yet I need to play this game where I'm borrowing the money from the credit card company, and now I need to make a payment and pay it back. Like, why do I want to deal with that? Just I've got the money in my account. Why can't I just send it to the guy? And still I'm having to use this dumb credit card and pay it off all the time. I don't know how it works in the UK, but it's all credit cards here. There's no way to transact unless you're technically borrowing the money.
Yeah, here it's quite similar, really, and I think yeah, it's just ridiculous, and it's just such a like it's not designed for that. Cryptocurrency is designed literally for that online payments, and it's
Yeah.
so strongly advantageous in that. It's really just that people have to get the idea that it's okay, And I think recently I've had a friend, and he had some people who wanted to buy a skateboard, and so they were sending him messages, oh, can I buy a skateboard and whatever. And he was just able to filter out all these people that were trying to like scam him or mess him around, because it was like, dude, just, okay, sure, I've got the skateboard. Here's a picture of the skateboard. You can see it's fine, just send me some Bitcoin Cash and come around and pick it up. And that just instantly, you're done. Like, because there's no coming back from that, right? Like, if people wanted it, they can just send him the Bitcoin Cash, he can see, and then he can give them the skateboard, right? But if they're trying to be like, no, man, but I don't have the money, but what about these cards? And like, it's just like, I'm not interested.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna do that. I'll sell used stuff on Craigslist all the time, and invariably the guy shows up and wants a discount, sort of just for being there. Like, okay, well, would you take
Yeah,
250? Like, did you notice some damage or something? Like, if they'd already paid
yeah.
me, then
That's
great.
right.
I like
And
that
it's
idea.
yeah, it's just one way, the risk is on the consumer rather than on the merchant, which is good in this case because the consumer is the one who wants the thing, right? The merchant, you can just get the money. You just sit there like you don't need to go out and track down this. You've already got the thing. They've got to come and get it. So
Yeah.
it does work nicely like that. So yeah, and obviously Bitcoin Cash or any crypto will work in that sense. So yeah, I mean, really, just all of this is to say, right, that all of these countries and the different regulatory regimes and so on and so forth. I'm not super worried about that. That it was a big talking point a couple of years ago. Oh, crypto is going to get banned. The government's going to shut it down and whatever, whatever. But if they were going to do that, they would have done it by now. And the fact that they haven't basically proves that they can't. And I don't think there's any country in the world that's really making overt noises that they feel like they could, or any country making a direct attack on crypto. Like, no country that I know of has been going around to people's houses to shut down their nodes and things like that, because it would just be ineffective. Like, countries themselves can't really coordinate on anything anyway. That, like, we already have problems with global warming and world peace. Countries can't get it together on that front. Why would they suddenly all band together to fight cryptocurrency? And then as each individual country bans it or has their own grief with it, then it just makes it that other countries have more to benefit from saying, okay, well, we're going to be the crypto haven, and then all the business flocks into their economy and they think, great. And then the other countries think, well, oh shit, like, we've just kicked out all the technological innovators out of our economy.
Yeah.
We need to get them back. So then they need to loosen it up. And there's just no way that all whatever it is, 100, 190 or 200 countries, however many there are, there's no way they're all going to get on the same page at the same time when one can gain it at another one's cost at any time. And
That's
yeah,
that's why organized cabals fall apart in the free market in the first place. The more simple, the more tempting it gets for someone to renege on the agreement.
yeah,
Which, using the word cabal, it reminds me of
cartel
the
yeah,
cartel, rather.
yeah.
Sorry, the mining thing. Like, how is that even supposed to tell? Like, what's the enforcement mechanism on that? Green or what?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and that's where that whole thing is such a red herring, because it just seems like the classic first pass of somebody who gets into crypto, especially somebody in his position with a lot of money and sort of feels like he's got a bit of influence, to think, well, let me just sort out all the problems of all this that's been going on. And I saw an interview with some miners who were saying, look, Elon didn't talk to us, and we've been huge miners. We actually know a lot of the miners. We know them all. But he didn't talk to us, and we didn't sign off on this, and we wouldn't be interested even if he did. So it really is just the classic case that everybody, whether it's Elon Musk or it's somebody on Reddit or whether it's a country, they all come to crypto and think, let me just fix all the what's going on here. Yeah. And then they naively think they can, and then they start trying to mess around with it, and then the crypto community just ignores them and carries on, and then they discover sooner or later, like, wait, I'm not having a lot of effect here. Like, I need to figure out more of what's going on, and then by the time they do, they're already out of the loop. They're already the world's moved on.
Exactly. Not to keep mentioning stupid Elon. Sorry, you'll have to. It just popped in my head. You'll have to have an Elon-free next episode.
Podcast. Yeah, maybe. And I think one other final point on this slide I've got here too, which I think people underestimate, is that the crypto community have all day to battle about crypto, right? Everybody who's not in the crypto community does not have all day to battle about crypto. So if governments are wanting to add regulations or whatever, like we saw before, they're also, the next day, then the healthcare people are in there, or the education people, or the transport people, or whatever other industry, the gold mining or commodities, or the defense secretary, or somebody needs their attention, and this, that, and the other. But the crypto community, they wake up every day. Yep, we're doing crypto again. Yeah. And it's just crypto every single day, right? So obviously everyone knows if one party is 100% focused on something and the other party is 10% focused on it, you don't even need that much of an advantage. Your natural advantage is just overwhelming in the fact that you're not losing. What do they call it? They always have a term at my job. Context switching. You're not context switching, right? So because of that, you just build momentum, and you can just roll past whatever other complaints, because even if the government does make some laws, by the time they come back to trying to enforce it or look around it, the world has just already moved on, and then they're back to square one, right? And then, so as we talked about, there's different countries have been banning and unbanning it. And people who are worried about banning too, it's pretty easy to see that's not going to happen, because like the US has had a war on drugs for 2 decades and conclusively lost it. Essentially, like, have not been purchasing drugs in the US myself, but as far as I'm aware, if you want some in the US, there's probably 101 ways to get them. So really, how is crypto going to be any different? And even more so, because even with drugs, very popular, but still it's only a minority of the population that wants it. Whereas with crypto, it's literally everybody. Everybody uses money. So it's even more hard for anything to be done on that front. And that a country trying to attack crypto is just going to have the hardest time, because it's not even like one. It was initially just Bitcoin, so maybe if they could try and keep a lid on that, they could keep a lid on it. But now the sort of genie has just spread out from under the thumb of Bitcoin, because it did get set off track. And so now it's Bitcoin Cash, and it's Monero, and it's Litecoin, and it's Ethereum, and Dogecoin, and every community just overlaps in different ways with each other and has different technology or different devs or different ways of running their nodes or different scaling considerations or whatever, like even for people who spend their whole life reading about this and trying to follow it, it's still 100 times more than you can keep up with, let alone for somebody who's in a government office trying to figure this out on every third Wednesday. Like, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, and just thinking about the drug prohibition, part of the reason that that fails is that the moral component of being a lawbreaker, the shame of being a lawbreaker, is sort of removed when you know it's a stupid law, and there isn't that that status of like, oh, I'm someone who breaks the law, because we realize that everyone should be able to freely transact, and often we're just getting some cabinets refinished, and a company will say, okay, here's the price if you pay us cash, and here's the price if you pay us with a credit card. Like people, even if there were a ban, if I wanted to cut a guy's lawn and he wants to pay me in crypto, I don't think either of us are going to feel like criminals for doing that.
Yeah, just making trades the informal economy. It just goes on, everywhere. Even in, like you're saying, yeah, even in the US, even in the UK, even in places where the government is fairly stable and actually does a reasonable job of enforcing its laws, there's still just, it just street deals happen all the time, right? Of various kinds, and even more so when it's a country where there's less law and order, which is a lot of places in the world too. And as those, as people in those countries kick off with it, well, then it just makes even more incentive for everyone else to get involved and more commerce. And so the economic incentives just snowball out of control. So really at this point, you just got to give a quick hat tip to Satoshi, who somehow just invented this idea that was so powerful and so unstoppable in so many ways that it didn't need any centralized push. It was just a great idea, and it's just defends itself on every front, seemingly, right? So I've got here a couple of, so these were these questions that you asked me about before this episode. So I'm going to read them out here, and we'll just cover off on any sort of angles of this that we have already talked about it a bit, right? But so the first one was worst case scenarios for government regulation and banning and how to be ready for that. BTC is obviously banker government friendly, but anything that poses an actual threat to dollars is going to be in the crosshairs for sure. I think the most vulnerable weak points are the exchanges. I wouldn't mind hearing a deep dive into what exactly has happened in countries where they've attempted bans and whether or how people have gotten around them. Right, so essentially, like we sort of talked about, countries ban it and then they unban it and they're back and forth. Really, for the listeners, what you need to know is that, yes, the exchanges are the weak points. So you want to have your own cryptocurrency in your own wallet on chain, because that's the security model of cryptocurrency, and that is what will protect you, right? Is that institution, well, not institutional, but that cryptography is built into the blockchain. That's how it's designed to work. And that even if a country, like let's say the United States, gets very heavy on trying to crack down on the exchanges, that will just fragment the trade, because the ultimate exchange is really just any crypto holder, like you were talking about with behind the cabinet or whatever, or somebody handing you $20 and you sending them some crypto. The more the government puts pressure on centralized exchanges, the more it sort of splits out and fragments under that, and the more benefit there is, or the more incentive there is for individuals to just suddenly be the person being that kind of local exchange for their local community, and they can get any crypto from anywhere, which could be their mate out of the country sends it into them, or people find a way, right? So definitely just hold your coins yourself in your own wallet, and yeah, if the government wants to regulate and ban it, well, you just sort of got to hunker down and ride it out, really, and don't have more of your net worth or your financial position tied up in something if you are worried about the government in your area getting very antsy about it. But essentially it's going to just melt away at a pretty fast rate. I think we're already seeing that it's kind of past the point of no return, and that, like you were saying, too many people are already invested and involved for it just to be hard to overwhelm that amount of interest.
Yeah, the thought of the exchange getting shut down has never made me very nervous personally because I'm not on pins and needles wondering when I'm going to trade back into
Mm,
dollars. I feel like if they just outlaw exchanges, period, and I needed to get rid of this crypto for some reason, I'd just find a way to spend
mm,
it. I would find something to do with it. I'm not hoping to go back into fiat, and that's really the point where you're vulnerable and vulnerable to taxes the most
yeah,
too is when you attempt to capitalize on your investment, if that's how you thought
yeah.
of it, and go back into their money. But if you just stay in, our money and transact in it and whatever, then there's nothing to worry about with the exchanges. The exchange is just your initial entry point, and then there's another half dozen ways to get crypto from
Yeah,
individuals.
that's right. And the more people are sort of earning crypto directly, and it's just becoming a real sort of economy, that it is separating more and more. And especially in Bitcoin Cash, that's a huge part of it, is that with BTC, they're so tied in with all that because it's all about the dollars and all about, like you're saying, the exchanges and people trying to flip in and out. But with Bitcoin Cash, it's more like people are flowing through the exchanges into the Bitcoin Cash economy, and then it's just circulating in there. Hopefully, definitely that's how I sort of try to see it anyway.
Hey, here's a conspiracy theory I just
Yeah,
thought of. Maybe China was getting jealous of Elon controlling the price at will, and they realized, hey, we can just tank the price anytime we want. We'll just go. Maybe we're going to ban it, and then they have a big buy-in, and off we go.
yeah, and I mean it's interesting you say that because I see a lot of these comments by people saying, whales are all out there manipulating the price of crypto, and these hedge funds or these, I don't know, big hodlers or whatever that well, they're just selling and they sell out and then it scares all the fish and then they buy back in. And I'm just like, yeah, but the problem is you make it sound like there's one huge whale. That's not the case. Maybe Elon is trying to, shift the price in his favor, and I'm sure he does have some influence. But he can't predict any time that Roger Ver might just be having a day where he's got the opposite idea and he thinks, oh, let me just buy it all off him and just not give it back. Or the Chinese government decides to throw something in the mix, or the US government decides they're going to ban it. Or, of course, there are
Yeah.
whales and people who are more influential in the economy, but still, every single one of them is small fish compared to every single other one. Once they're combined, and they can't predict or manipulate all of each other. So really, they are operating at their own risk. So I don't really buy too much into this whole whales are buying up and dumping everyone's coins and stuff all the time. I don't really.
It's really a lot more relaxing to care primarily about the spirit of the mission of the coin and not what's going on with the price all the time. Like this huge crash
Mm,
recently, I don't care. It's mildly interesting, but it does not get my blood pressure up because the thing that I am focused on is the idea itself. And I like this community because, unlike other crypto communities that are all about their coin, the BCH community is about the idea
mm,
of decentralized money. And you go into any other subreddit, all they're talking about is the price of their coin, and let's we need to make sure our coin is successful, and what are people saying about it? And really, I feel like Bitcoin Cash people are open to whatever accomplishes this idea the
mm.
best.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, I've seen that in the meetups that I've been going to recently as well. Some people are interested in mining or some people are interested in different things, but I was surprised at how much it was about basically gambling for different people. And that's fine because it's good that cryptocurrency has a profit incentive, it gets people interested. But it's sort of, I was also seeing there is a bit of an undercurrent of people who are interested, yeah, and they can see all the gambling is going on. They're like, that's fine, but they have more of like, oh, we really need to change the world. The system is broken. Those kind of things do come into it, I think, and increasingly more so because there's only so much of the world that is interested in gambling, right? But there is a lot of the world. Once that market is saturated, that will be convinced to get on board as sort of like, wow, we're really changing society, more of a social movement, especially as it becomes easier and easier to see that reality occurring as more and more people jump on board, so it's less risky for somebody to sort of say, yeah, no, I support the idea of free trade kind of thing. So then we've got this other question you had here, which was about projections around the inevitable BTC crash and the effect of the public perception of the name Bitcoin. That is the main doom scenario in my mind, in which everyone resentfully associates the word Bitcoin with that digital paperweight that they overpaid for and is now worth $0. I would argue that our eventual occupation of the word cash, as it is left vacant by the absence of paper money, could have potentially more importance than even the name Bitcoin. I agree with you. I think, well, I half agree with you. I don't think that there's going to be a big problem around Bitcoin crashing and everybody thinking, oh, fuck Bitcoin, so then fuck Bitcoin Cash, because the reason is that the crash is not going to happen all at once. Like, it's not going to just, Bitcoin is going to crash and go to zero, and that's the end of that, I don't think. Instead, it will be more like, as we've seen, Bitcoin Cash was at 100 to 1, and then it hung out at 81 for a while, and now it's 50 to 1. And then maybe it'll find another little opportunity. It'll just move up to 30 to 1 and hang around there for a while, and then 15 to 1. And then there'll be just a certain tipping point where it will just go 15 to 1 to like 3 to 1 to 1 to 1 really, really quickly. And then Bitcoin will start to crash, but it will be crashing because a lot of the people in Bitcoin will be selling out to get Bitcoin Cash. And also that people will just see that, like, for people who are involved, they will understand what's at play, right? So they understand there's Bitcoin and there's Bitcoin Cash, and people are switching from one to the other. And people who are not involved, well, they don't know Bitcoin Cash, whatever. It's just by the by. And so if Bitcoin kind of falls off a cliff a bit, and then somebody says to them, hey, can I trade you some Bitcoin Cash? To them, Bitcoin Cash, or people might just start referring to it as Bitcoin or whatever, and everyone it will seem like there was no change really to those. So people who are involved know the difference, and people who aren't involved, they're not going to notice any difference, really. So I think in that respect, I'm not super worried about it. There will be a big resent, as well as because everybody in the whole world knows that crypto is risky, and you're taking your own self-responsibility by getting involved. So whenever anybody gets wrecked, they kind of realize, well, that was my fault for the most part. But I do think you are onto something here, that also Bitcoin Cash was a very, very clever sort of rebrand. In the unfortunate scenario that it did have to rebrand, this was about as good as it could have gotten, because now, yeah, as cash kind of fades out of usage, people might just say, hey, give me some cash, and mean Bitcoin Cash. Or maybe they'll just say, yeah, give me some Bitcoin, and that will also just mean Bitcoin Cash, because it's just what everyone trades.
That word cash does have a great marketing appeal, as they're always trying to phase it out in fiat. They are sort of leaving it up for grabs for somebody to swoop in and occupy that word that has very warm and fuzzy connotations when you think of cash. It's that green stack of good. There's no there's no convolutedness there to what do we feel about cash and what do we mean by cash. And that would be a ultimate good future where the word cash just refers to what we're talking about. And I do like thinking about the doom and gloom scenario. It's not the most popular way to think, but whenever I get very convinced about something, I like to try to talk myself out of it and project forward and think like, okay, how could this go off the rails? How might I be wrong about this? And I mean, crypto people have a certain vision of the future, the reserve currency of the world in our case, and a lot of crazy stuff has to happen before we get there. And you're probably right. You think of it as a gradual crash. I guess for whatever reason in my mind, I imagined a sudden crash where everyone realizes, oh my God, this is a Ponzi scheme. What are we doing? Let's get out of here. And we end up with this albatross around our necks, this Bitcoin name that's been associated with, you wouldn't want to try to get going calling yourself Enron Cash or Bernie Madoff Cash or something that everyone just associates with like money loss and tragedy. And I'm much more enthusiastic about that, the potential of that cash word being left on the table. But a gradual switch over would be preferable to a big catastrophic crash.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we will. There's definitely potential for that. I'm not saying that it's not really going to happen. Just I think it's less likely. Like you can see, there's all the stuff with like Tether at the moment. I've sort of mentioned that a bit on the show, but recently that seems to be getting worse and worse in terms of, okay, other stable coins are now just printing like billions every day, and it's all turning into a bit of a sham. But we've seen this before. That's kind of what happened with Mount Gox and with different exchanges that have kind of blown up, or it's all unraveled at a certain point. The crypto industry goes into a bit of a crisis. There's a big crash. This is where everybody should be managing their finances appropriately, so that in such a scenario they're not completely ruined, right? They can afford to sort of ride it out until things turn back around, and maybe pick up some cheap coins on the bottom. But the point is that we can have the world is just in such a monetary state right now that it's really a question of what drops first, like, because Tether could blow up tomorrow, but so could like Lebanon, or Venezuela's already pretty wrecked, or any other country that is sort of teetering on the edge with their financial like Australia has been doubling its money supply in the last couple of months, right? So they could be just, I don't think it's going to happen, especially not in Australia's case. My personal opinion that people are a bit oblivious there, so it's not really necessarily going to catch on as a big fear of, people are very trusting of the government. So they'll tolerate a lot of inflation stealing away their money before they sort of clue in, especially because everyone's getting rich in the housing market, so they all think they're financial geniuses. But if you, any domino could come loose, any card in the house of cards could just fall out, and then suddenly crypto will be the life raft that everybody just piles into. Or it could be the other way around, where first crypto's own scams and issues with like Tether or whatever, maybe they blow up and everybody goes out of it, but then the house of cards kind of falls apart in the fiat world, so then crypto is still the better option, so everybody switches back. So it's impossible to know which way it's going to go down first, and how it's going to play out, obviously, with BTC being in the center of it. Yeah.
We could always end up in that Peter Schiff future where we all have a little leather pouch of gold coins jingle jangling on our belts, or I don't know exactly what he's picturing practically. I do agree with his case for against the dollar, but he is like sort of 90% of the way there.
Yeah, that's the strangest thing, I've definitely had that episode where we talked about Peter Schiff and all his opinions and stuff, and it's just so strange that he has all of the right prerequisites in terms of, okay, what is the money, how does it come to be, yada yada yada, and it's happening in front of his eyes. Like, he's been watching it for such a long time, and he knows. I don't know how he imagines a new money would come about. But if you could imagine it happening, this is pretty much what crypto is. It's following pretty much the exact formula, which is it's pretty uncertain. Lots of people are speculating in and out, but it's educating the world about finance. More people are piling in. There's some legitimate commerce going on, right? And just slowly the world is just adopting to that mantra. And it's proven that it is practical, that people are using it to trade online for different things. So this whole, we're going to go back to gold and everybody's going to realize crypto is just a Ponzi. Like, I don't want any gold. Like, I understand all the reasons to have it, but I would just rather have crypto because it's cheaper to store and it's more secure to store it and it's more practical and it's got massive upside, which gold probably doesn't have. And for all those reasons, it's just like, I just don't care about gold,
It's the weird thing about the gold position. If you try to think it through, like, okay, the currency collapses, Peter Schiff's dancing a jig over there in Puerto Rico, and we all are carrying gold around. It's heavy and annoying, so we're going to store it, and then we're going to be issued paper receipts, and then we're going to just start trading the receipts because those are a lot easier than going and getting your deposit out. And then the banks are going to realize, hey, we can just hand out more of these receipts than we're actually holding in deposits. Like, you end up in the exact same place again. It might take 50 years, but we'd be right back here again with the same problem. It's not like we weren't on the gold standard before, but it falls apart for a reason, that the government and the banks, due to gold being heavy and annoying to carry around, are going to take advantage of the fact that we have to trade something easier to put in your pocket,
Yeah,
which
that's crypto.
that's the
Yeah.
digital solution. I don't know how everyone who's all about gold doesn't sort of play that out and see
Yeah, I
that.
don't know. It's very strange as well that they can't see Peters thinks, it's all about gold and it's all about whatever. But is he trading gold with, I don't know, his gold mates or his suppliers or whatever? No, right? He's just stocking it in a vault. But Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash companies, especially, they do actually trade in Bitcoin. Among
Yeah.
internal to the scene, deals are done in Bitcoin Cash, and employees are paid in Bitcoin Cash, and some people go to the certain merchants that they know that accept Bitcoin Cash. And so definitely, it's not a perfect example yet. It's still very young and growing, especially with how sidetracked everything got with Bitcoin Cash having to split off from Bitcoin. But there is an actual economy forming in there in the center of it, which gold has had its time, and it did have that at one point, and then that all died out, and it's not coming back because even the people who love it, like Peter Schiff, he's not out. He's not doing what the crypto people are doing, which is going out convincing people, hey, now let's start trading it every day. It doesn't happen. So it's
He's selling it, I guess. He's doing what the Bitcoin Core people are
mm,
doing, and he's making sure that others buy in.
yeah,
But not to crap on Peter Schiff too much, because I do agree with him. His whole point about how much longer are other countries going to agree to send actual physical goods in exchange for this monopoly money that we're
yeah,
just printing. I saw Biden just set the 2022 budget to $6 trillion,
it's nuts.
and they say that the tax base is 3.5 or something much less than that. So that's at least another 2 trillion blasting out of the printing press. It, at some point, there shall be a problem.
There's going to be a mass reckoning, and we're just going to see it sometime. It's been predicted for the last 10 years, 15 years, since the GFC, basically, Peter Schiff has been calling for it, and he's still right. Things have been trending in that direction. It's just taken longer than I guess he would have expected. And also, crypto has really thrown a spanner in the works because it's given humanity an escape hatch. Like, it's going to be painful for the people who realize at last, which is why it's such a key topic, for society, and it's why it's growing in prominence. But it might be that we get out largely scot free because there's already the crypto economy is going on, and just as things start to melt down a bit, everyone just goes, shit. Let me just last second bail in this big 1 year maybe, or 2 years of just suddenly huge chunks of the world just start switching over. Or it could be that things get really, really bad and just crypto sort of rises from the ashes afterwards. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting time to be alive. So I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely. It's funny when I try to project forward and think about what kind of problems could we run into, and I think, okay, Tether, that's pretty bad. Quantum computing, I don't know about that. The thing that it doesn't worry me is Bitcoin Core's big criticism of us all the time is that we must be so centralized. And to me, the worst case scenario for a bad centralization outcome is literally what happened with the development team on that side of the fork. That's a bad outcome for being centralized, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. This whole centralization stuff. It's just nonsense. It's like anybody can go and sit in. I have on some of the dev calls, and you can see we've got 6 different teams of people, and they're negotiating and figuring it out. And okay, you're going to put in this, and we're going to put in this, and let's set a timeline and do all this stuff. Bitcoin Core, I don't know. Firstly, even the Bitcoin Core community, they don't really pay any attention to what's going on. Like the broader Bitcoin community, half of them have no idea what's going on in their own dev teams to begin with. But then even if they do, it's just, everybody who cared enough to dispute things has just taken the easier path of least resistance and left. And so they're just in more rational discussions that are going on elsewhere. And so, yeah, Bitcoin just has that centralized force. Okay, they've got 10,000 nodes. Great. but they probably have quite a high percentage of nodes of actual users. But the design of cryptocurrency, the design of Bitcoin, was never that most users should be running nodes. It should be the more invested people, the miners, the major businesses, the developers, and the very strong fans. Like, I mean, I'm going to be moving around a bit, but if I wasn't, I would get a node set up and I'd just run it. And okay, it might cost me a couple $100 a year, but whatever. Like, I don't care. I would be doing it, just doing that, just willing to pay that cost. I'm not trying to be like, oh, it has to be so cheap that anybody can run it, because most people, they just got their phone wallet, they just download it, they just use it. It needs to be like any tech company or whatever to run your apps on your phone. You don't need to set up all your tech infrastructure and everything. No, you just download it on your phone. That's it's just the difference is that in crypto, that stuff is run by a decentralized group of people, but still a core, basically a core, but still still a community. Whereas with Facebook, okay, it's the same thing. They've run Facebook servers, right? But instead of, there's just Zuckerberg at the top controlling what's going on, and crypto is the same, but there's just no Zuckerberg, and that seems fine to me. It seems like it's going all right. So
you've generated a very detailed and reasonable argument there, and I feel like there's a lot of copy paste happening on the other side, that they'll just say, well, you're centralized.
Yeah.
And I've had people literally just paste an argument back to me where I think, well, okay, I've actually seen that exact thing, and you try and push back, and there's nothing there. And the weird part is not so much the logic and reasoning itself on that side, but just how popular it is. It's weird how popular that is, that it's pretty easy to poke holes in it. And I guess because people are in it to turn around some dollars, they just kind of don't want to hear it. And the predominance of it is sort of the mystifying part to me.
Well, I guess it just goes to the fact that narratives are the key in society, really, is that the truth comes out, but it just takes a long time, right? People can go on believing that the sun revolves around the earth, right, for a few hundred years, right? As long as everyone believes it and everyone knows it, well, that's fine. In cryptocurrency, it's not like that at all, but it's like that in the sense that in the Bitcoin community, what you're doing if you're defecting from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, in a lot of cases, is you have 4 mates that all have Bitcoin and all tell you that Bitcoin Cash is garbage and who cares about it. So actually, the social consensus of those friends or people or the little chat that you have, like with the Kim.com one, it was a classic where he went in to go to that debate, and you could hear at the start and at the end there was these little segments of them all on the call together, like haha, and Kim doesn't know anything, haha, and then Kim comes in and just wrecks them with some pretty sensible arguments. They scream at him and get a bit salty, and then he says, all right, guys, well, thanks for having me, and he leaves. And then they have a little bit at the end, like, what a shitcoiner, like, he still doesn't know anything. And it's just like, all among themselves, they were convinced, but from the outside, it just looks so ridiculous.
I hope it doesn't take a couple hundred years
No.
to figure this one out.
Won't take that long, I say, 2 to 3 years, maybe 2 to 5. But the word is getting out there. At these meetups, just there's not any hardcore Bitcoiners there. They just aren't. They're just outmoded, really. So yeah, let's just roll on towards the end of the show then. So I've got meme of the week every week. This week I have this one comes from Marcel Cho, and it's a Twitter post. It is a picture of Silence of the Lambs, which is a film. I looked it up. Details just before this. It's 1991 it was released. I knew it was the 90s, but I didn't know it was 91. And it has a very famous artwork for the movie poster of Jodie Foster's face with a moth over her mouth, which is relevant in the plot of that movie. And it's called Silence of the Lambs. It has Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins, who plays the Hannibal Lecter, the cannibal, and it's very, very famous and good movie. So I recommend to everybody, if they haven't seen it, to check it out. But in the meme, we've got Silence of the Lambos, and they've got the Bitcoin logos on Jodie Foster's eyes, and they've replaced the moth with a, a Lamborghini. And the quote is, "You still wake up sometimes, don't you? You wake up in the dark and hear the roaring of the Lambos," which is a play on the, the screaming of the lambs that is in the actual movie. And I saw it, I just thought this was very clever, because in our recent in the community, there's been the price crash, and you can see every single time when the BTC price is going up, if you're watching on crypto Twitter, it's all these people saying, "Aha! I told the bears, like, they've all shut up now. The price is going up. It's not over. We're all getting rich and everything." And then as soon as the price dips off, suddenly they all vanish. It's ghost town, So that's I don't know. Have you seen Silence of the Lambs?
I surely have.
Good movie, right?
I like that.
Recommend it to people. It's a bit of an intense movie, so don't sit down to watch it at 9:30 p.m. when you're with the winds howling outside or anything like that. But unless you're into that, unless you're one of those people who like a bit of a thriller and horror movie type of things. But yeah, very, very good movie. All right. And as well, obviously, we have our message to the community section, where you've come on the show, you've told us a little bit about crypto regulation and everything, but just what do you think with where we're at in terms of with Bitcoin, or with anything really? From, like, obviously you post pretty regularly on the RBTC subreddit, and I'm sure you have friends that are into Bitcoin Cash and everything. Is the community going in the right direction? How are we doing right now?
I think that it is I think that there's a lot of pushback on that store of value narrative that just cannot stand up if you think about it for 2 seconds, that something can't just store value without doing anything. You can't name anything that has held value long term that you can't also, where it's not easy to just say what else it does. You need to be able to say what it does, and I think more people are understanding the necessity of a medium of exchange to supersede store of value, and the BTC notion of, if we all believe it's money and we just keep that belief going, then it will be money. Like, you need to use it as money, and it needs to act as money. And that function needs to come first, and then the value comes. You can't just declare this thing's job is being valuable. What does it do? It just is valuable, so we trade it.
But they don't trade it.
That can't stand up.
That's the key point, I guess.
That's well, they trade it for dollars, I guess, when they sell. Yeah. But they that's on the hush hush. They don't talk about selling. But I think more people are coming around to that. And I also want to say to any Bitcoin core people, I don't think that they're listening, or any proof of stake people, come on and debate Jeremy. Okay. He's not a religious zealot. He'll be convinced by debate if your arguments are that good. Come on, for my entertainment, the audience, I think we'd all love to see that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do have. I've done obviously some reviews. I did that episode this week where I was reviewing the sort of Bitcoin Cash versus or cryptocurrency versus stocks debate. I'm definitely open to having somebody on who is big on Bitcoin. I've said, what's his name, Spencer Schiff. He can come on anytime, or anyone else. I mean, they do have to. It's hard though, because they will have to be convinced. I mean, I'm happy to do it on somebody else's show too as well, to go on their show. But if they're coming onto my show, obviously they're going to feel like I'm kind of, it's a home ground advantage, right? Like, if I'm running the stream and everything. But
yeah, you need a mediator, I guess.
So it would take a little bit of setting up, but I'm definitely up for that. And people in the Ethereum or proof of stake or whatever, I'm definitely happy to talk about it. I guess at the moment it's just not, my podcast maybe isn't big enough that it gets people commenting that I feel would be. I do have people who comment, like I have had a few with Bitcoin SV that have sort of
Yep.
commented in the comments like, haha, you and your shitcoin, like Bitcoin SV. And I'm just sort of like, all right, it's not even worth arguing with them, to be honest. If they had any, if they had anything beyond, we've got more block size, so therefore it's great. If they had
Right.
any
You
other,
notice we're you notice we're never going into other people's subreddits and using saying shitcoin
yeah,
and ha ha ha. Like, what is with that? We're always getting those people.
yeah, well, that's right. It's it's what I talked about in my proof of passion episode with that trolling is a very bullish indicator for a cryptocurrency because I had somebody commented on Twitter. I made some comment and then somebody commented like, but nobody cares about this stupid BTC fork. It's irrelevant. And I said, well, you cared. You commented about it. And then they didn't reply to that because then it's just in a box.
Oh,
Like there's no way out of that. Because if they didn't care, they wouldn't have commented in the first place. And then once I've called them out for that, what are they going to do? They're going to comment again? Well, then that just proves my point. They're going to not comment? Well, that's what I wanted them to do anyway, which was just go away and leave us to crack on with converting the world to Bitcoin Cash. So yeah, when a community is very heavily trolled, that's because there's a lot of passionate people there. Because trolls are drawn to passionate discussion because they don't want to troll somebody who doesn't care. They want to troll somebody that they can get a rise out of. So it's
you caught them in the proof of caring
yeah, yeah,
mechanism.
exactly. Proof of troll. That's the how has somebody not made troll coin using that the face of the troll face? That would be the best icon to have on Coin Market Cap. Of that would go off. I'm sure of it, but
Oh, I'm sure it's there. What are there? 10,000?
it's probably ranked like 7,000 or something. Must
Right. Oh yeah. What happened to that cyber computer thing? Was that still on the list? I
internet
missed it.
computer. Yeah, I think that was
That was
it's
it.
still in there. It's still like number 9, but it has just been crashing. Like the price has just been on the perpetual downturn. And while we're speaking of that, actually, too, by the way, as well, Coinbase, their stock listing has not been going well. They've been on the plummet from $400 down to sub 200 at this stage, which is fine. I mean, it's to be expected that they would have some rough waters early on. But I think I even mentioned this when I talked about Coinbase initially being listed. Is it's a bit of a self-defeating business model because much like PayPal, right? If they're successful, they sort of take themselves out of business because they're onboarding people onto crypto, and then the more people have crypto, the less they need Coinbase, and the more they
I
can just
still need.
trade amongst themselves, right? So then Coinbase needs to figure out, well, what do we do otherwise? But I mean, they've even said it themselves in their own company announcements and stuff. Like, we don't want to be holding everyone's coins because if we are, we're just a huge target for hackers. That's bad for everyone. So they sort of don't want to do that. But then what other kind of services can they offer? They can't really reverse track and get into banking, even though they're a financial company, because that's also going obsolete. So, yeah, I mean, people are just better off buying a bit of crypto and holding it themselves if they think Coinbase is some grand stock. But I don't know.
It's funny. I saw there's Instagram ads here in Canada for stock brokerages, obviously targeting
Mm.
millennials, and the ad just said, "You can buy Coinbase stock." Like that's it, just a big Coinbase logo. And I comment like, "You mean the complete flop of an IPO? Like, who is this
Yeah.
for? What do you?" And I'll still see it all the time,
Well,
as if someone is just going to sign up just because they heard the word Coinbase. Ooh, I can buy that. Sounds good.
yeah, it's very funny that I mean, like they say that the stock ownership percentage or whatever in the population is increasing. Like in Australia, it's actually very high, right? In Australia, they have one of the highest stock ownership, per capita of everywhere in the world, just because it's a relatively well-off country, and also because the population are very willing to understand those sort of concepts. But around the world, it's taken off, with Robinhood and all this sort of stuff in the new generation because everybody has that underlying sense that the financial system is a bit rigged and people know that they can't, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, you could have one parent in a household make enough money for a whole family and, that was fine. And then now people know like, oh, okay, well, both of my parents work and they're still kind of struggling to put it together and how I've got student debt and you know, if I was going to get married, then even between the two of us, we'd still be like scraping by, and just inflation is just stealing so much value from everyone constantly that all those subtle ramifications have just spread around to the entire generation of everyone under the age of, you know, about 35, I think. And we're only going to see more of that as time goes on, you know, that's why everybody's just plugging into cryptos and just, getting on with it.
Get out of dollars. I think people don't even know why they want to get out of dollars, but they want to get out of dollars.
That's exactly it. Well, there we go. That's the message to the community. Get out of dollars. That could be the point, the learning point for this episode. So yeah, that's really the end of the episode. As always, thank you very much to my donators. I love you all. You know, pseudonymous donators. I saw there was something, I was going to donate to something with BitPay, and they had this big KYC form, and I was like, this is just garbage, you know. It's just give me an address and let me send it in, you know. So quick and easy. Shout out to Freedom of the Press, Edward Snowden's org. You can donate to them in BCH anytime you like. So if you like what he's doing, maybe check that out. Slides and resources are at bitcoincashpodcast.com, and thanks for coming on the show, James. Do you have any like shout outs you want to give, or where can people find you, or anything like that?
I drew a few Bitcoin Cash related comic strips, and I made that account called Really Big Comics on Instagram. You can check those out. Okay. I think I have one follower. I have not mentioned it to anybody. Yeah. So
okay, I'll put a link in the description so people can check that out too. And that will do it for today. Until next time.
He pulled out his laptop and bring up the site, looked at me and said, this will change your whole life. And he started explaining the basics to me. The miners make money by taking a fee every time a transaction is made and complete, and they work every minute and day of the week. A guy named Satoshi created this all. He's the mastermind of it, the brain and the balls. There's a lot more to say, but before I begin, just tell me right now if you're out or you're in.